Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you today at ITB. I'm a great admirer of the work that's being done here. And it's also a pleasure to come and speak to you about the findings from our Future of the Travel Sharing Economy. So we work with many of the global players around the world, whether they're destinations, hotels, car rental players, online travel agents. And we've noticed that the sharing economy is a big trend, and the big players are beginning to sit up and take note. So today, I want to talk a little bit about why is the sharing economy so popular, some of the challenges it faces, and then looking in more detail at some of the opportunities and the future direction of this trend and its impact on travel over the longer term. So the big question is why is sharing developed? Why is it so popular? Well, sharing's been going on for millennia. But when you look at what's happened since the global economic crisis back in 2008, 2009, there was a massive focus. Obviously, we had the global recession. Consumers saw GDP contract, living standards fell, and basically money, it was very important to have value for money. And in the aftermath of that, we had the development of brands such as Airbnb, Uber, and these have really helped take the sharing economy by storm. Also, you have the element of the green zeitgeist, so the importance of sustainability for consumers. So they realize that they have resources that are being underutilized, and they want to share those and make the most of it and maximize that opportunity. And if that brings in extra money, then that's a nice benefit. So you've definitely got the economics, you've got the environment, and then also you have this sense of community. So this was all outlined in Rachel Botsman's work, What's Mine is Yours, the rise of the collaborative consumption. So society and sense of community is very important, this social element of sharing. So first of all, we saw that it wasn't just backpackers, using couch surfing, but also Generation Y really took to this concept and embraced it. And what it enables them to do is to travel relatively cheap, but also in such an authentic way that they found they weren't getting from the more traditional formats or models. However, it's not just Gen Y that this appeals to. Whoever you speak to, whether they're grandparents or with a family, they're trying out Airbnb. It's very popular. It has a diverse appeal. Particularly the fact that you have this sense of you can have a bit more flexibility in the choice of the product, the lodging a product that you may look to book. So yeah, it's got a very diverse appeal. Technology has also underpinned this trend. So massive technological disruption. I know there's been a lot of talk about that at ITB. So technology, the rise of smartphones. So the iPhone, only 7 years old, but already it's been so disruptive to many industries, including travel. They're talking about over 1 billion units of smartphones sold. And then also this internet-enabled device, enabling consumers to be contacted and receive information, notifications, and even buy things on the go 24/7. That is having a massive and profound effect. So technology is shaping the development of the sharing economy trend. It also helps in terms of enabling consumers to trust the service that they get from sharing brands. So reviews are critical. If you're hiring an Uber driver, you want to know their ratings because safety is a concern. So the fact that the sharing brands provide reviews and this sort of peer-to-peer assessment of the service you provide, again, is a strong. It's sort of a catalyst, and it helps promote the sharing economy even further. So as I mentioned, the importance of mobile, geo-based apps, and getting this information and these services on the go is very important. So Euromonitor, we've been tracking private rentals for the past 10 or more years. So we were very lucky when the whole sharing economy trend started happening, because we're like, oh, we've got some data already. So private rentals on the chart here, we've got round about sort of 37 billion in 2013, and that's going to only rise to 45 billion by 2018. So it is increasing, maybe not as fast as we might hope. But what we're having is this trend towards alternative lodging. So it's not just private rentals, it's also the posh towels, so where you see hostels going for a revamp, becoming a bit more sort of design oriented. So again, the whole lodging area is being shaken up by consumers wanting something a bit more diverse, unique, and design-led. But when you look at the private rental space compared to the global lodging space, it's still dwarfed. So you've got a bit of a David and Goliath scenario. So private accommodation currently accounting for 6% of global lodging sales, but that's compared to the hotels with around about 500 billion. So the traditional hotels at the moment, yes, they're aware of the trend. A lot of the CEOs coming out and say, it's no concern of mine. However, we'll go on later to discuss why, if your consumers are trying out a new format, a new type of business model, why you should be concerned. So here we have some brand sales comparing the leading OTAs, so Expedia, Booking.com. These are the big players in the online travel space. But what we're seeing is definitely strong growth for the likes of HomeAway, vacation rentals, and the likes of Airbnb in the private rental space with renting rooms or flats. So they're definitely coming up the rankings. Already HomeAway is in our top 10. But it's very interesting because obviously they're a platform that sell vacation rentals, so they can sell direct to the consumer, but equally they can have partnerships with the leading OTAs. So Expedia already providing about 150,000 or more of HomeAway properties on its site. And we expect more choice to be introduced into the online intermediary space. We're also expected to, at the moment, the sharing economy hasn't really penetrated the GDS arena as such, but it's likely to increase its penetration, particularly as the GDS try to provide more alternative types of accommodation. Obviously, we know that the sharing economy, the consumers love it, but the industry has been a little bit slow in sort of recognizing its importance and its dynamic performance. But you have the likes of Airbnb trying to prove their business case about why it's important to local economies. Because at the end of the day, if people are renting their rooms, we know that causes major controversy. But they've done a bit of work showing that, for example, in Berlin, it's created over 3,000 jobs. In New York, it's created, 460 million extra revenues to the city economy. So that's their case. We also have the likes of Uber in terms of urban mobility. So again, a massively disruptive force moving into local markets. It's expanded incredibly quickly. So the company, sort of only 5-6 years old, already valued at a massive, over $40 billion. That's what its next valuation is expected to be following its new funding round. So in 55 countries, in 250 cities, in terms of global penetration, it's only a quarter of what it could potentially be. And obviously to investors, that's highly attractive. So hence this massive valuation that we're seeing, propelling them to be valued more than car rental players such as Hertz and even some legacy airlines. However, there's a lot of controversy around particularly Uber and the taxi app, the taxi hail services. So lots of bans, protests, legal challenges, even in cities that claim themselves to be very sharing orientated, such as Seoul in South Korea. So Seoul saying we are sharing a city, however, very strong response to no, we're not going to allow Uber drivers in our city because they're not following the local laws and they're not, basically, they don't have the right licenses. So, highly controversial area, but what we're seeing is, again, this consumer sort of, if you like, this swell of support for sharing services. So one driven by the fact that consumers want something value for money, but equally the fact that it gives them this choice and the flexibility. We're not saying that they'll only choose sharing, and this has been talked about a lot today. What they want is the choice. It's not one or the other, but both. So having the best of both worlds. So we're expecting car share members, this is Navigant research, to grow from 2.3 million to 12 million. So that's a lot of growth over the next 5 years. Interestingly enough, you have many diverse types of players moving into the urban mobility area for sharing services. So initially we saw Avis Budget buying up Zipcar. So car rental players quickly seeing the potential that the sharing services have, the sharing brands. We've heard they developed their own type of sort of more where you can pay by the hour rather than having to pay for a whole day. So again, giving consumers that flexibility. Then you have ride-sharing operators like BlaBlaCar that started off in Spain and then Drivey in France. And I was reading quite an interesting thing that Ford are looking at creating their own dynamic social shuttle. So it's kind of like a van. If anybody's been to Africa, you'll see the taxis that they have. I was in Uganda, and they have taxis that just pick people up off the street, and they just go where you want to go. So Ford are looking into this kind of the Uber pool style of taxi rides, so providing services that are a lot more flexible and giving you that door-to-door option. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big players, but there's some massive challenges to overcome, and nothing's sort of written in stone. So tax, one of the biggest sort of complaints levied against the sharing brands as well. Your hosts are not paying tax to the local government. Your drivers are unlicensed, they're not paying tax. The hotel guests, sorry, the sharing brand guests are not paying tax. They're not paying the hotel tax. So this is a massive issue. And what we're seeing in places like Amsterdam, so Amsterdam, sort of the sharing capital of Europe now, is that they've found a compromise. And they've worked with players like Airbnb and said, look, come on, we have to have an equal playing field. So Airbnb is now collecting, ensuring that tax is collected by the guests in the properties that are on the Airbnb platform. Again, the issue of workers' rights, so ensuring that people who are operating in this part of the economy are protected. There's been a lot of concern about lack of safety for those staying in sharing brand apartments or flats, or using an unlicensed taxi or a ride share. So again, the importance of ensuring that checks are carried out consistently, and also that when you say, for example, Uber says that they conduct 7 years' worth of previous background checks on their drivers, it would be interesting to know whether they're also applying that to all countries around the world, because as we know, there have been some very high-profile situations, for example, in India with the alleged rape, and then the fact that the local government had to clamp down on the taxi apps and ban them, and then actually Uber repositioned itself more as a sort of a formal taxi player, also introduced an alarm into its app. So again, there's some interesting developments. People will say, well, what about data privacy? But at the end of the day, we believe that consumer safety should be paramount for these brands, as you would expect from any supplier. And then obviously some zoning issues, so protecting housing stock and ensuring that there isn't unnecessary noise and noise pollution and mess. Right, so let's now talk a little bit about the opportunities and where this trend is going to go in the future. So this is what we feel consumers, they just love the sharing economy if they've had a good experience, that's the caveat. But yeah, we see it that they've embraced it, they expect it, they're looking for choice, they're looking for unique experiences, authentic experiences. And going to a city and staying in a different part of town than downtown, sort of downtown centre, where tourists would normally be housed, it really appeals to people who are looking for something a bit more off the beaten track. So we're seeing peer-to-peer moving into sort of the likes, or the private rentals partnering up with the likes of the online travel agents. We're also seeing more and more partnerships growing between the likes of the travel suppliers and the sharing brands. But I think what's important is, what we need is, at the moment you can look on sort of Private Rentals Berlin and you'll get a list of people who supply, whether they're suppliers or they're intermediaries. But what's quite likely is that we'll have some kind of meta search player who they won't care. They won't care if that player is a sharing brand, a traditional brand, or something else. And ultimately, that's what consumers want. They want to have their Airbnbs next to their motel ones, next to their intercontinentals. So in the future, the trend is only going to grow because we have the technology, the way technology is moving is really pushing this trend on. So the fact that m-commerce is just going to grow enormously, any sort of app-based platform that facilitates payments through the app, and everything is done in this sort of seamless payment way, is only going to grow. Obviously, mobile technology crucial to the expansion of sharing, particularly, as I mentioned, the importance of the reviews and ensuring that consumers have this sort of validation that the service provider they're using is credible, and also that they can trust them. Another interesting point on technology is wearables. I'm sure you've heard a lot about wearables today at ITB, but the fact that more and more people are going to be wearing smartwatches. Okay, Google Glass didn't quite make it. It didn't make the grade. It's sort of died a death. But smartwatches really have the power to become very mass market. And so we expect, for example, wearable technology to go mainstream within the next 2 to 3 years. So this will only encourage people to do more and more bookings on the go, and they will expect their travel providers to provide notifications, you know, this push-pull notifications as they go along. And then Apple Pay. So everybody waiting for what's Apple doing with the Apple Watch, what's Apple doing with the Apple Pay. So all these things are going to help just, again, give a bit more sort of momentum to the sharing trend. And then include this sort of diagram here. It's quite interesting that where you have a sharing brand, there tends to sort of spawn sort of support or ancillary services. So we're already seeing that with Airbnb, whether it's laundry or pickup of keys or drop-off. So again, it's interesting that these brands create other apps and other brands that help support that main brand. So some of the key areas that we at Euromonitor expect to see more investment and more development are, for example, in the tours and activities section. So this is a fast-growing area of interest because of the mobile technology, because people are going to be connected 24/7. You'll be able to reach them in destination. And, you know, we were hearing from Ryanair today how they're also looking at this area, enabling people to buy theatre tickets or theme parks or, you know, booking restaurants in destination. So we think that this is a big, big potential. It's difficult to gain global scale because it's so fragmented. However, when you have apps such as Viable, you know, they're doing a good job. But does it really need to be, does it need to be global? It's quite interesting that you have the ability to tap into local suppliers when you travel abroad. It doesn't all have to be on a global level. And then the independence. So this is the sharing market is great for independence because it has low barriers to entry. And so, for example, independent hotels, or you have independent B&Bs, again, using this platform to promote themselves and taking some of the if you like, sharing some of the insights from the sharing economy, again, to grow their business. And then on the corporate side, we have the likes, as I mentioned before, the sort of penetrating more the traditional forms of distribution. So partnering more with the likes of Booking.com or Expedia. Also partnering with sharing brands. So last few weeks, we heard that Starwood Hotels with the SPG program are partnering with Uber. So you can sort of, there's this kind of cross-link where you can earn your Starwood points by using the Uber service. So we're likely to see more and more partnerships between traditional brands and sharing brands. And then on the carrier partnership, this is to do with the mobile device carriers. So in Germany, a very interesting example of Deutsche Telekom. And they're going to preload the Airbnb app onto their new devices. So that means that when consumers buy their new phone, they'll get a sort of an Airbnb voucher that they can then use, a 30 € voucher. So this is one way of becoming very integrated into the whole travel infrastructure. Business travel, so an interesting debate on business travel and the sharing economy this morning. It's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but what we have is Airbnb and Uber targeting the lucrative business travel market. Obviously, business travelers like to spend a little bit more, but then you also have the flip side, where you have to have duty of care and ensure that the travelers are well looked after and they're living and sort of driving around in safe and secure vehicles. Also, this sort of moving into the GDS arena, we've already seen an example with Flightcar in the US, which does airport pickups. And so it's signed an agreement with WorldSpan. So without a doubt, we'll see people like Travelport looking to partner with the sharing brands as we go forward. These guys invest an awful lot of money in technology, but at the same time, they know the importance of providing choice to the end consumer. And then we have Concur as well, the expense management company, which has its TripIt app. And Uber and Airbnb are integrated into its platform. So again, this sort of movement towards open booking means that it will be easier for business travelers to choose, okay, I'm going to Berlin, I'm going to stay in Airbnb, or I'd prefer to stay in a 3 or 4 star or luxury, whatever you prefer. So at Euromonitor, we looked at, okay, who do we think might enter the fray of the sharing economy? And the obvious choice is all those, the big online platforms. So Facebook with 1 billion users, it's already looking at its own virtual currency. Now, if they start sort of saying, well, let's ask our users to sort of share with each other, there's just a huge market there. eBay, obviously the pioneer of the retail sharing economy, but it already offers some level of holiday packages and holidays. But again, it's got the potential to offer rooms. So again, these players, they have the vast user base that they could leverage if they so wished. And an interesting development that we saw at the end of last year was Amazon Local starting to offer hotel rooms from independent hotels in the States. So, you know, Amazon's incursion into the travel is obviously going to be a little bit worrying for many players because they have such sort of knowledge of consumers, the way they target things, their use of big data. It's highly sophisticated. And then again, the importance of Apple. So Apple not likely to start offering rooms, but what the technology they have and the fact that they're moving into payments, again, is only going to facilitate this trend. So what does a post-pure landscape look like? Well, we believe that the future is going to be this mix of both worlds, so the best of both worlds. As I mentioned, the sharing economy offers choice, flexibility, and value for money. It's unique. you get this interaction. It's very sociable, and so that's something that really strikes a chord with the likes of Generation Y and other demographics, whether baby boomers or whoever. So basically, we think that it's got longevity. But there is an awful lot of work that needs to be done ensuring that standards are aligned and that consumer protection, as Talib Rifai quite rightly said, we need to ensure that consumers are protected and that standards are maintained. So without a doubt, legislation is going to change. You know, it's not likely, it's going to. We've already seen Amsterdam finding a compromise. We even saw Paris saying that they've struck a deal with Airbnb. So Paris now, one of the sort of largest destinations for Airbnb rentals, whereas they're actually, at one point, we're going to ban the sort of rental of second homes. So yes, there are bans, but it's not consistent across the world, and we definitely feel that it's a case of finding that compromise to ensure that at the end of the day, the consumer gets that flexibility. So how will travel brands respond? Well, there's a couple of options. They can start to embrace some of the sharing economy principles, being more collaborative with their users, being more collaborative with their guests, and getting them involved in the process. They can also launch their own sharing brand if they so wish, so sort of forgetting the old traditional model and going it alone into this new world of developing app platforms and then sort of almost bypassing the fact that you have to have real estate involved. And then you can also have this more simple, straightforward way, which we've already discussed a few times today, which is partnering with these new sharing brands. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for coming along to the session today. I know it's been a sort of a long few days at ITB, lots of things to go and see. So I just want to say thank you. And if you would like to download a copy of the report, it's just an excerpt, but yeah, some slides from our report, there's a link there. And obviously, if anybody's got any questions, please do come and see me. Or, you know, I don't know what the time is now, but if anybody's got any questions, we could take some questions. No? Okay. Thank you very much.